It's 3:14 in the morning. The room is quiet. Nothing unusual has happened. And yet, without warning, your mind quietly retrieves a moment you never asked to see again. Not because anyone mentioned it or anything reminded you of it. It simply arrives. That is where this investigation begins. Perhaps you waved at someone who wasn't waving at you, or was it that you confidently walked in the wrong direction? You might have mistakenly called your teacher Mom. The details are different for everyone. The pattern isn't. Out of thousands of ordinary days, countless conversations and moments that genuinely changed your life, the system chose this one small social mistake to preserve. Not your greatest achievement or your happiest memory. This investigation initiated. When I first opened this case, my diagnosis seemed obvious. The archive had failed. A memory that should have remained stored had somehow escaped containment and was replaying without authorization. It was neat, logical, and fit the evidence I wanted to see. However, it did not fit the evidence that actually existed. As I examined more cases, an inconsistency emerged almost immediately. Embarrassing memories were emotional, certainly, but so were weddings, graduations, moments of triumph, or profound relief. Those memories mattered too, yet they rarely appeared uninvited in the middle of the night. That shouldn't have been possible, unless emotional intensity wasn't what the system was measuring. So, I stopped asking why embarrassing memories survived and started asking what they were designed to accomplish. That single decision changed the investigation. Then I noticed the first genuine clue. Every recurring memory had something in common. It had a witness. Sometimes that witness laughed, other times they looked away, or maybe they probably forgot the entire incident before the day was over. The system didn't. It continued treating the event as though it still contained useful information. Not emotional information, but rather social information. The system wasn't measuring how bad the moment felt. It was tracking who saw it happen. It wasn't enough evidence to solve the case, but it was enough to reject my initial hypothesis. If I wanted to understand why these memories refused to disappear, I would have to stop studying memory itself and investigate the world that shaped the operating system long before the modern world existed. The first clue was clear. The system treated certain social mistakes as though they still mattered. The question was why. Modern life offered very few answers, so I stopped examining the present and turned my attention to the past. Not your past. Ours. To understand the operating system, I had to examine the environment it was originally designed for. Imagine waking up 50,000 years ago. There are no cities, no supermarkets, no hospitals, no emergency services. There is only your small community, the landscape around you, and whatever knowledge your group has managed to accumulate. In that world, belonging is not a luxury. It is infrastructure. The people around you share food, warn you about danger, care for your children, and stand beside you when survival depends on cooperation. Alone, every problem becomes larger. Together, even harsh environments become survivable. Seen from that perspective, social mistakes begin to look very different. An awkward interaction is no longer just awkward. It is information. Information about behavior that could strengthen trust or slowly erode it. That doesn't mean every mistake led to rejection. Far from it. But evolution doesn't wait for certainty. It prepares for possibility. If remembering a socially costly mistake slightly improved the odds of remaining part of the group, then remembering became a worthwhile investment. The system wasn't trying to preserve humiliation, it was preserving experience with predictive value. That realization explained more evidence than any previous theory, but it also exposed another inconsistency. If the purpose of the system was learning, why did these memories feel so intrusive? Why revisit them years later when the original danger had long disappeared? And why did replaying an awkward moment from 3 years ago produce a sensation in the body that felt, in some measurable way, genuinely threatening? These questions led me to the most significant piece of evidence in the entire investigation. Embarrassment activates the same region in the brain that processes physical pain. This is the anterior cingulate cortex. That finding reframed everything I thought I understood about the case. The system wasn't overreacting to embarrassment. It was correctly classifying it as a threat signal because throughout most of the species' existence, that's exactly what it was. Social rejection wasn't a bruised ego, it was a survival risk. I noted that when embarrassment occurred, the body released cortisol and adrenaline. These stress hormones don't simply record the emotional experience, they enhance the encoding. They instruct the memory system to store the moment in more detail, with more durability, at higher resolution than an ordinary experience would receive. A 19th century psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus documented how quickly the brain discards information it hasn't marked as significant. Most experiences erode within hours or days without emotional anchoring. A Tuesday in March 2019 received no threat classification, no cortisol boost. It entered the system and quietly disappeared. The embarrassing moment received both. It didn't just survive the forgetting curve, it was insulated against it. That inverted the question. I'd been asking why the embarrassing memory stayed. The more revealing question was why the ordinary days were designed to leave. And the answer was that the selection process was running correctly. Low-signal data was released. High-signal data was held. The difficulty is that the selection criteria were built for a world where social standing was a survival metric, not for a quiet bedroom years later. But then, why 3:14 in the morning? Why does the replay arrive specifically during the resting state, uninvited, unprovoked, when the user was attempting to do something entirely unrelated to the original incident? This is when I realized I was treating memory as the destination. Perhaps memory wasn't the destination at all, but just the tool. The true objective lay somewhere ahead, not in preserving the past, but in preparing for the future. When the brain is not actively engaged in a task, a network of brain regions activates automatically. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network. It does not rest, it replays. It pulls the files flagged as emotionally significant and runs simulations searching for patterns, asking what went wrong and how a similar outcome could be avoided. It is a background threat review process running during the one window when no competing task demands attention. The 3:14 replay is not the brain malfunctioning. It found the right moment to work. The archive was behaving less like a broken storage system and more like an experienced teacher. I had spent the entire investigation treating memory as the destination. It wasn't. Memory was only the delivery mechanism. The real objective was prediction. Every experience the system preserved was being evaluated for a single purpose. Could this help us make a better decision tomorrow? The system wasn't trying to drag us back into the past. It was attempting to prepare us for a future that had not happened yet. There was one final observation that completed the investigation. If memories were permanent recordings, every replay should look exactly the same. They don't. Each time a memory is retrieved, it becomes temporarily unstable. Neuroscientists refer to this as memory reconsolidation. For a brief window, the memory becomes flexible. New emotions, new understanding, new context, all of it can become part of the file before it is stored again. Each replay is not simply a playback. It is, in part, a rewrite, which means every time the memory is revisited in an attempt to process it, resolve it, or simply get through the night, it is reinforced. Each access digs the pathway slightly deeper. The attempt to be finished with the memory is the very mechanism extending its life. The archive was not replaying history. It was revising instructions for the future. At that moment, my original diagnosis could no longer survive the evidence. The system had never malfunctioned. The archive had not failed. Neither had the prediction engine nor the learning process. I had simply misread what the system was attempting to do. I had mistaken adaptation for defect. One final piece of evidence deserved documenting before the case closed. One that may be the most practically significant finding in the entire file. Research consistently demonstrates something called the spotlight effect. Humans dramatically overestimate how much others noticed, registered, and remember their embarrassing moments. The audience for the 30-second incident has, in the vast majority of cases, forgotten it. Their systems did not tag it with the same urgency. It was not their social risk. Their cortisol did not spike. The moment entered their archives and followed the forgetting curve to its natural conclusion. The memory that has been replayed hundreds of times exists, in most cases, in a single archive, yours. The audience moved on before you did. What feels like a public record is a private file. That doesn't mean every embarrassing memory deserves your attention. Ancient systems sometimes overestimate modern risks. An awkward presentation is not exile from your tribe. A message sent to the wrong group chat is not a threat to survival. But the operating system was shaped in a world where small social errors could carry lasting consequences. It continues to learn using rules that served our ancestors remarkably well. The next time an old memory quietly appears at 3:14 in the morning, pause before assuming something is wrong with you. Ask a different question. What lesson is the system trying to convey? And is the lesson worth the cost of keeping it? Perhaps the memory is no longer warning you about danger. It is simply reminding you that you survived it. The investigation began with a suspected malfunction. It ends with a different verdict. Some memories stay with us because they were never designed to preserve the past. They were designed to improve the future. Verdict accepted. Archive updated. Investigation ongoing. Every operating system carries a file it refuses to archive. If yours has one, submit it to the archive below. Patterns appearing repeatedly may become future investigations. End of report, case file closed. The next investigation has already begun. The human brain runs a continuous comparison process, measuring the user's status, progress, and achievements against others in the immediate environment. For most of human history, that environment contained roughly 150 people. It now contains 7 billion, curated specifically to show the most impressive outputs of each one. The result is a specific, persistent, well-documented sense of being behind regardless of what the user has actually achieved, while you always feel behind in life. Report incoming.